Sometimes, a man's last $15 can buy more than just a barn. It can buy a second chance at life. When Levi Cooper handed over his last few bills for a derelict barn on the outskirts of a forgotten town, he wasn't looking for miracles, just for peace and an escape from his past. But when he pushed open that weathered door, he found something waiting for him. A tired, half-starved donkey, standing there as if it had been expecting him all along. No brand, no owner, no explanation. What Levi couldn't know was that this barn and this mysterious donkey would lead him to buried family secrets and a long-forgotten purpose. The question is, was finding that donkey an accident, or was it destined to be there? Before we return to the story, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I have something very special in store for you. The photograph in Levi Cooper's shirt pocket had been there for so long, the edges were as frayed as the fabric. In it, a younger version of himself stood beside his grandfather on a ranch somewhere in New Mexico, both of them squinting into the sun with genuine smiles. The boy in that picture believed the world made sense, that hard work and honesty led a man to success. The man carrying that photo now knew better. Levi had turned 43 that spring, though he felt considerably older. The years have a way of piling up when you make the wrong choices, trust the wrong people, and let the good things slip through your fingers like water. He had worked on ranches from Montana to Texas, always moving on when things got complicated, or when his past caught up with him. Nothing criminal, mind you, just debts, disappointments, and the kind of reputation that follows a man who can't seem to hold on to anything. The pickup truck that had brought him toward Redemption Flats had given up the ghost 10 miles back. He'd walked the rest of the way in boots that needed new soles, carrying everything he owned in a canvas pack that wasn't even half full. The June heat pressed down on the desert like a physical weight, making the air thick and heavy. Sweat soaked his denim shirt, and dust coated his throat with every breath. Redemption Flats wasn't much to look at. The town had been dying a slow death for the last 20 years, as the mines dried up and the railroad was decommissioned. Now, it was just a handful of buildings clinging to existence along a two-lane highway that almost no one used anymore. The general store was still open, more out of stubbornness than profit. A gas station with 2 pumps stood on the edge of town. Everything else, the old bank, the hotel, most of the houses, was vacant, with dark windows and doors hanging from rusted hinges. Levi had come here because the man who'd given him the ride said there was an auction. A few old properties being sold off for back taxes. Dirt cheap. When you only have $15.73 to your name, dirt cheap sounds like a fortune. The auction was held in front of the general store on a Saturday afternoon. Levi counted maybe 20 people in attendance. Most of them were locals who'd come more for the entertainment than with any serious intention of buying. The auctioneer was a man named Tom Richter, 70-something with a battered cowboy hat and a bolo tie that was probably in fashion when Eisenhower was president. "Next lot," old Tom called out, his voice still strong despite his age. "It's the old barn property on the East End. Half an acre, more or less, with structures still standing, though I can't guarantee for how long. No water rights, no utilities, no road access to speak of." He paused, looking over the sparse crowd with eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. "We'll start the bidding at $20. Silence. Someone coughed. A screen door slapped shut somewhere down the street. $20. Old Tom tried again. It's a barn, folks. The roof is still mostly there. More silence. Levi found himself studying the property sheet, such as it was. Just a hand-drawn map showing the location and a note about the delinquent tax. Something about that barn called to him, though he couldn't say why. Maybe it was just because he understood what it meant to be abandoned, left behind, forgotten. 15, he heard himself say. Heads turned. Old Tom looked at him with an expression that might have been pity or approval or both. $15. Do I hear 16? Nothing. Going once for 15. Tom paused, giving the crowd one more chance. Going twice. He brought his gavel down on a wooden crate. Sold to the gentleman in the blue shirt for $15. And just like that, Levi Cooper was a property owner for the first time in his life. It had cost him nearly everything he had, but it was his. The feeling that washed over him wasn't quite pride. He was too worn down for that. But it was something close. A small, stubborn spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally found a place to stop running. Old Tom handled the paperwork with a simple efficiency, filling out forms in triplicate with a fountain pen that left ink stains on Levi's fingers. You know what you're getting into? The old man asked, not unkindly. A barn? Levi said. More than that. Tom peered over his wire-rimmed glasses. That property has a history. It's been empty for over 20 years. But before that, it was part of something bigger. You ever hear the name Cooper? Levi went still. Cooper was his surname, common enough to mean nothing. But the way old Tom said it, with weight and intention, made Levi's pulse quicken. It's my name, too. Tom's eyebrows rose slightly. Is that right? Well, ain't that interesting. He tapped the deed with a gnarled finger. This barn was part of the Cooper Ranch, a long time ago. Big spread back in the day. All broken up and sold off now. But that one barn, he shook his head. Nobody ever wanted it. Some folks say it's cursed. Others say it's blessed. Depends on who you ask. What do you think? I think it was waiting. Tom handed over the deed. You take care now, Mr. Cooper. And don't be surprised if you find more than you bargained for. Levi walked the 3 miles to his new property as the sun began to dip toward the horizon. The barn stood alone in a shallow valley, surrounded by scrub brush and sandy soil. It was bigger than he'd expected, maybe 60 feet long and 30 feet wide, built from aged timber that had been bleached nearly white by decades under the desert sun. The roof sagged in the middle but hadn't collapsed. 2 small windows, both broken, flanked a wide door that hung slightly ajar. The silence out here was absolute. No traffic noise, no voices, no machines, just the whisper of the wind through the sage and the occasional cry of a hawk overhead. Levi stood before his barn and felt the weight of the isolation settle on him. This was it. This was all he had. A ruined barn in the middle of nowhere, bought with his last dollar. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open wider. The hinges groaned in protest, and dust motes danced in the shaft of golden light that fell across the packed earth floor. Levi stepped inside, letting his eyes adjust to the gloom. And that's when he saw the donkey. The animal stood in the far corner, perfectly still, watching him with dark, intelligent eyes. It was a medium-sized gray, with long ears that swiveled in his direction like radar dishes. Its ribs showed through its dusty coat, and its hooves were in need of a trim, but it held itself with a dignity that seemed almost human. Levi froze. The donkey didn't move. It just stared. its expression one that seemed to know too much. They regarded each other for a long moment, man and beast, both of them stranded in this forgotten place. "Well," Levi said softly, his voice raspy from disuse and desert dust. "I wasn't expecting company." The donkey's ears flicked forward. It took a careful step toward Levi, then another, moving with a calm deliberation. Levi stood his ground, letting the animal approach at its own pace. When it was close enough, the donkey extended its nose and sniffed at Levi's hand and shirt, investigating him with a gentle thoroughness. "You been here long?" Levi asked, knowing he wouldn't get an answer, but needing to fill the silence anyway. "Did someone forget about you?" The donkey had no collar, no brand that Levi could see. Its coat was rough with neglect, but underneath the dirt and dust, the animal seemed sound, hungry and lonely, but not sick or injured. How long had it been surviving here? And why had it stayed, when it could have wandered off in search of better prospects? Levi found himself thinking of his grandfather, the one from the photograph. The old man had loved animals, had treated them with respect and kindness. He always said you could judge a man's character by how he treated the creatures that depended on him. "I'm going to call you Moses," Levi decided. "My grandfather had a mule named Moses, stubborn as they come but loyal to the bone." He reached out a slow hand and touched the donkey's neck. The animal leaned into his hand, accepting the contact as if it had been waiting for it. That first night, Levi rolled out his sleeping bag on the barn floor, while Moses watched from his corner. Neither of them had much. Levi had a few cans of beans in his pack, some crackers, and a canteen of water from the general store. He opened a can of beans and ate half. Then, on an impulse, he poured the rest into a rusty bucket he found and set it in front of the donkey. Moses approached cautiously. He sniffed the offering, then ate with careful, grateful bites. When the bucket was empty, the donkey looked at Levi with eyes that seemed to hold a universe of understanding, then lay down on the floor with a soft grunt. Levi lay back in his sleeping bag, staring up at the rafters where the moonlight filtered through the gaps in the roof. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes sang their lonely songs. Closer, just a few feet away, Moses breathed steadily and calmly, a living presence in the darkness. For the first time in a very long time, Levi didn't feel completely alone. He had a barn, a donkey, and exactly 73 cents in his pocket. It wasn't much of a foundation to build a life on, but it was more than he'd had that morning. As sleep took him, Levi found himself thinking of the photograph in his pocket, of his grandfather's smile, and of old Tom's strange words. "I think it was waiting." Maybe he had been too. The morning came with a light so bright it ached. Levi woke up stiff and sore, his back protesting the hard ground and his mouth tasting of copper and dust. Moses was already up, standing near the door with his ears pricked, alert to something Levi couldn't sense. "You hear something, old fella?" Levi pushed himself up, his joints cracking. He was getting too old to be sleeping on barn floors, but beggars couldn't be choosers. The donkey turned to look at him, made a soft noise that wasn't quite a bray, and then walked deliberately to a spot near the center of the barn. There, Moses began to paw at the ground with one hoof, over and over, kicking up small clouds of dust. Levi watched, curious. Animals didn't do things for no reason. He'd learned that much in his years working with livestock. Moses wasn't agitated or distressed. It was a purposeful, insistent behavior. The donkey pawed at the same spot again. Then it looked at Levi, as if to say, "Pay attention." All right, I'm coming. Levi walked over, his boots stirring up more dust. Where Moses had been pawing, the earth looked disturbed, looser than the packed ground around it. Levi knelt and brushed the top layer away with his hand. Beneath the dirt, he felt wood. Not just the ground, but planks. Most of the barn had a packed earth floor, but here, someone had laid down floorboards. Time and neglect had buried them under years of accumulated dust and debris, but they were still there. And one of them, Levi discovered as he cleared more earth, was loose. Moses made another soft, almost encouraging sound. You know something, don't you? Levi worked his fingers under the loose board. It came up with surprising ease, revealing a dark space beneath. Using the board as a lever, he pried up two more planks, creating an opening about 2 feet square. The hole underneath was shallow, maybe a foot deep, carved out of the hard earth. And sitting in that hollow, wrapped in a piece of oilcloth that had kept the worst of the damp away, was a rusty tin box. Levi's hands trembled slightly as he lifted it out. The box was about the size of a large book. Its metal surface was scarred with age, but it was intact. A simple latch held it shut. He carried it over to where the light was better, by the broken windows, and sat with his back against the wall. Moses drew near and stood beside him, watching with those unsettlingly intelligent eyes. Let's see what we have here. Levi worked at the latch. It groaned in protest, seized by rust and time, but finally gave way with a sharp crack. He lifted the lid. Inside, protected from the elements by oilcloth, lay a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Beneath them, a brass key with an ornate head. Levi lifted the letters with care. The paper was yellowed and brittle. The script on the envelopes was elegant but faded. The top one was addressed simply to J.C. No other name, no address. The postmark was from 1948. Gingerly, Levi opened it and unfolded the letter inside. The handwriting was a woman's, fluid and practiced. My dearest J, I write this knowing I may never find the courage to send it. And if I do, you may never forgive me for what I have to tell you. My father has found out about our meetings. He was furious this morning and has threatened to send me to my aunt's in California if I do not agree to cut off all contact with you. He says, a daughter of the Miller family cannot associate with. The letter ended there, or perhaps another page had been lost to time. Levi stared at the words, his mind racing. J.C. His grandfather's initials were J.C. Jonas Cooper. Could this really be about him? He opened another envelope. This one was dated 1947. My dearest Jonas. So it was for him. Levi's heart hammered against his ribs. I cannot stop thinking about what you said by the well. You asked me to wait, to have faith that we would find a way to be together, despite my father's objections. I want to believe you. I truly do, but Jonas, you must understand the impossible position we are in. My family controls half the land in this county. Your family owns the other half, and our fathers have hated each other since our grandfather's time. They say some rivalries can't be mended, but I believe in you. I believe in us. Meet me on Thursday at sunset, where the cottonwoods grow tall. I have something I need to tell you, something that changes everything. Forever yours, Eleanor. Eleanor. Levi whispered the name into the dusty air. At his side, Moses shifted as if in recognition. He read more letters, each one revealing pieces of a story. Jonas Cooper and Eleanor Miller, in love. a forbidden love between the children of rival families. The letters spoke of secret meetings, stolen moments, desperate plans, and through them all, a thread of something darker. Mentions of Jonas's brother Samuel described as ambitious and ruthless. A letter from 1950 made Levi sit up straighter. Jonas, Samuel came to see me today. He knows about the baby. I don't know how he found out, but he knows. He said terrible things, made threats. He told me you agreed to leave the valley, to give up your claim on the Cooper lands in exchange for my father leaving us alone. He said you were packing to leave and didn't even have the courage to tell me yourself. I don't believe him. I can't believe him. But Jonas, I'm scared. Samuel showed me papers, documents with what looked like your signature. He says the Cooper ranch will be his now, that you signed it all away. Please tell me it isn't true. Please tell me you haven't abandoned us. The baby is moving inside me now. Your child, Jonas, our child. I need to know you're still fighting for us. Levi had to set the letter down, his hands trembling. Eleanor was pregnant with Jonas's child. His grandfather had been a father, which meant Levi's own father might have been. He grabbed another letter, searching frantically for more. This one was dated 1951, the handwriting different, masculine, rushed. Eleanor, they think I'm dead. Samuel planned it so well, made it look like an accident in the canyon. But I survived, barely. I'm in hiding now. I can't let them know. If Samuel finds out I'm alive, he'll finish what he started. He has the documents. He forged my signature. He stole everything. The law believes him, because he has the papers and I have nothing but my word. I can't come to you. They're watching you, waiting to see if I make contact. If I show up now, they'll know the child is mine, and Samuel will use that against us both. He'll take our baby, Eleanor. He has the power, the money, and the law on his side. Trust the barn. I've hidden everything there. The proof, the truth, everything. One day someone will come. Someone who needs to know. Keep the faith, my love. Keep our child safe. The donkey will remember. The donkey will know when it's time. Yours in this life and the next, Jonas. Levi sat in stunned silence. The barn. Jonas had hidden here, lived here in secret, while everyone thought he was dead. The letters painted a picture of betrayal that cut deep. A brother who attempted murder, who stole an entire ranch through forgery and lies. And Eleanor, loving Jonas even as she carried his child, forced to pretend he had simply vanished. What happened to the baby? What happened to Eleanor? The brass key lay at the bottom of the tin box, mysterious and significant. Levi picked it up, feeling its weight. A key to what? There were no locks in this barn, no doors that needed such an ornate key. Moses had settled on the floor, resting his head on his hooves, watching Levi with patient eyes. The donkey will remember, Jonas had written. The donkey will know when it's time. You've been here all along? Levi asked softly. Your ancestors, I mean. Waiting, like Jonas said. The donkey's ears twitched, but he didn't move. In the silence of the barn, with dust motes dancing in the morning light, and the weight of decades-old secrets in his hands, Levi felt the world shift beneath his feet. He had come here looking for nothing more than a place to exist, a refuge from his own failures. But this was bigger. This was his family, his blood, his grandfather's stolen life. Jonas Cooper, Eleanor Miller, a lost baby, a stolen ranch, and somehow, impossibly, this barn and this donkey had preserved it all, waiting for someone to come back and uncover the truth. Levi looked at the letters scattered around him, at the mysterious key, at the devoted animal that had led him to this discovery. His grandfather had written, "One day someone will come, someone who needs to know." That someone was him. He thought he was buying a barn for $15. What he'd really bought was a key to the past, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to set things right. The following days passed in a blur of physical labor and racing thoughts. Levi worked on the barn from dawn until dusk, doing what he could with no money and limited tools. He cleared debris from the corners, swept away years of accumulated dust and droppings, and patched the worst of the holes in the walls with scraps of wood he found scattered around the property. Moses watched it all with a quiet interest, occasionally wandering off to graze on the sparse desert vegetation, but always returning by nightfall. On the third day, while clearing out what had once been a tack room in the back of the barn, Levi's shovel hit something solid under a pile of rotted hay. He knelt and dug with his hands, uncovering a wooden plank about 3 feet long and a foot wide. Years of being buried had darkened the wood, but the hand-carved letters were still crisp, cut deep, and filled with faded paint. Cooper and Sons Ranch, Eston, 1891. Levi sat back on his heels, holding the sign in both hands. Here it was, proof, solid and undeniable. His family, Jonas's family, had founded this ranch more than 80 years ago. The words "and sons" implied generations, a legacy meant to be passed down. But instead, it had all been stolen, buried, forgotten. He carried the sign outside and leaned it against the barn wall, wiping away the grime with careful hands. The craftsmanship was excellent. Someone had taken great pride in making this sign. Jonas's father, perhaps, or his grandfather. It represented hope and ambition, the belief that what you built would last beyond your own lifetime. Moses ambled over to investigate, sniffing the sign with interest. The donkey gave a low huff, almost like a sound of approval, and then walked purposefully toward the east corner of the property. Levi followed, curious about the animal's strange behavior. At the property line, where the desert scrub gave way to rockier ground, Moses stopped and began pawing at a mound of stones. Levi crouched, pulling the rocks aside, and found the remains of a fence post. The wood was nearly all rotted away, but the metal base was still there, along with the rusted wire. This was the border, Levi said aloud. The edge of the ranch. He looked out over the empty land, trying to imagine how far the Cooper property had once stretched. Miles, probably. Enough to support cattle, horses, a real operation. All of it gone now, parceled and sold, leaving only this half-acre and the barn like a forgotten remnant. But Moses seemed intent on showing him more. The donkey led him to 3 other corners over the next hour, each marked with similar traces of old fencing. The animal moved with a clear purpose, as if following a map only he could see, as if he had walked this boundary many times before, or his ancestors had, and the knowledge had somehow been passed down. Your great-great-grandfather probably ran supplies for Jonas, Levi said, stroking the donkey's dusty neck. Is that how you know? Stories in the blood. By the end of the week, Levi had run through what little food he had and needed to find work. He walked into Redemption Flats one morning, arriving at the general store just as Martha Brennan was unlocking the door. Martha was in her 70s, wiry and sharp-eyed, with silver hair pulled back in a practical bun. She gave Levi a frank look as he entered. "You the one who bought the old barn?" "Yes, ma'am. Levi Cooper." Her expression shifted, something flickering in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or surprise. "Cooper. Haven't heard that name around here in a long time. You knew my family? Did you know who they were?" Martha moved behind the counter, her movements economical and precise. Everyone knew the Coopers back then. Big family, ran half the valley. Then it all fell apart. Tragedy and betrayal, people say. Levi's pulse quickened. What kind of betrayal? Martha watched him for a long moment, weighing something in her mind. You really don't know, do you? I'm starting to. There were letters in the barn. They mentioned Jonas Cooper and someone named Samuel. Jonas and Samuel, Martha nodded slowly. Brothers. Jonas was the oldest, supposed to inherit the ranch when their father passed. A good man by all accounts, honest, fair. But Samuel, he was ambitious, wanted more than his share. He wanted it all. She paused, measuring her words. There was an accident. Jonas disappeared, presumed dead. Samuel produced papers showing Jonas had signed everything over to him before he died. Within a year, Samuel owned the whole ranch. But Jonas didn't die, Levi said. Not then, anyway. Martha raised her eyebrows. You found something in those letters? Enough to know Jonas was alive in hiding, because Samuel tried to kill him. Levi leaned on the counter. There was a woman, too, Eleanor Miller. At that name, Martha's face softened. Eleanor. My goodness, I haven't thought of her in years. Beautiful woman, sad eyes. Lived by herself in that big house on the hill, right up until she passed. Must have been 15 years ago now. Never married, no children that anyone knew of. People said she had a broken heart she never recovered from. Levi's mind reeled. Eleanor was pregnant in the letters. But if no one knew about the child, then what happened? Was the baby born? Did it survive? Ma'am, I'm looking for work. Odd jobs, day labor, anything. I need to eat, and I need a few supplies to fix up the barn. Martha looked at him. Why fix it? It's just an old barn on a worthless piece of land. Because it's mine, Levi said simply. Because Jonas Cooper was my grandfather, and someone needs to remember what happened to him. Something in his words must have reached her, because her expression softened. There's a rancher about 15 miles north who needs help with his fencing. Doesn't pay much, but it's honest work. She hesitated, then continued. You should know Samuel's grandson still lives around here. Victor Brennan. He's my son, though we haven't spoken in years. Runs a development company. Got big plans for the valley. If he finds out you're asking questions about the Cooper land, about Jonas, he won't be happy. Why not? Because everything the Brennan family has, everything, was built on what Samuel Cooper stole. If the truth came out, if there was proof Jonas never signed those papers, it would undermine Victor's entire claim to the land he's planning to develop. Martha took a piece of paper and drew a rough map. Here. This is how you get to the ranch that needs a hand. Tell him I sent you. Levi took the paper, his mind a confusing haze. Samuel's grandson. The betrayal had echoed through generations, just as the loyalty of donkeys had. Over the next 2 weeks, Levi took whatever work he could find. He mended fences, tended to livestock, and performed maintenance on aging equipment. The jobs were sporadic and paid little, but he earned just enough to buy food for himself and grain for Moses, along with a few basic tools and materials for the barn. He settled into a rhythm, working through the day, returning at dusk to a simple meal, and poring over Jonas's letters again and again, trying to piece together the full story. Moses remained his constant companion. The donkey would follow him as he worked around the property, stand watch at night, and always seemed to sense when Levi's spirit was troubled or weary. There was something almost supernatural in the animal's perception, the way he appeared at the precise moment he was needed. One evening, as the light faded and Levi was measuring a beam for repair, Moses walked to the main support post in the center of the barn. The donkey pressed his nose against the wood, held it there, and then looked back at Levi with clear expectation. What now? Levi walked over, running a hand over the post where Moses had indicated. The wood was rough, weathered, and scored by years of use. And there, about 5 feet up, where it would be easy to miss in the dim light, someone had carved letters into the wood. Levi retrieved his lantern and held it close. May 2nd, 1945. His fingers traced the inscription below it. Jonas and Eleanor marked their love on the wood of this barn, making it permanent in the only way they could. The letters were deep, etched with care and devotion. Around it were other, smaller carvings, dates, the initials of horses or cattle, the accumulated record of a working ranch, perhaps. But this one stood out, deliberate and centered. A declaration of love in a place where Jonas must have felt safe, before everything fell apart. Levi stood in the growing darkness, one hand on the carved post, the other resting on Moses's warm neck. Somewhere out there, the stolen ranch lands stretched out under the same stars. Samuel's descendants lived in comfort and prosperity, and here, in this humble barn, was the truth written in old letters, carved in wood, remembered by a donkey whose ancestors had witnessed it all. "They can't erase you," Levi said softly, speaking to his grandfather across the decades. "I won't let them." The tin box held more than Levi had first realized. Late that night, unable to sleep, he examined its contents again by lamplight and found another letter tucked beneath the main bundle. The envelope had never been sealed, as if Eleanor had written it but never sent it, or perhaps had never intended for it to leave her hands. The paper, too, was different. Expensive letterhead, with her initials embossed at the top. Eleanor Miller. With trembling fingers, Levi unfolded it. "My dearest Jonas, it is late and I am writing this by candlelight in my room, while my father sleeps downstairs, believing I have finally accepted his decision that I can never see you again. He does not know, cannot know, that you still visit me, that we meet in secret, that every moment with you is worth all the risk. Tonight, you asked me again to run away with you, to leave everything behind and start anew somewhere no one knows our names. And tonight, I almost said yes. I almost agreed to abandon this house, my family's name, the security of the Miller fortune, because what is any of that compared to you? But there is something you must know before you ask again, before we make any choice we cannot undo. Oh, Jonas, I am with child. Your child. I have known for 6 weeks now. I have kept the secret, afraid to tell you, because I know what it means. My father will disown me if he finds out. Your brother Samuel will use it as leverage. He will claim I trapped you, that you are unfit to lead the Cooper ranch if you cannot even rein me in. I cannot write his cruel words. The baby moves inside me sometimes, just a faint flutter. A baby, Jonas. A life we created together out of love, not duty or family obligation, or disputes over land. Just love. I need you to understand one thing. Whatever we decide, wherever we do or do not go, I would never regret this child. I would never regret you. Even if we must hide for the rest of our lives, even if we lose everything else, and we will have this. We will have each other and the family we are making. Meet me tomorrow by the old well at sunset. We will talk, really talk, and decide our future together. I trust you, Jonas Cooper. I trust us. Yours, with all my heart, Eleanor. Levi read the letter 3 times, his throat tight with emotion. Here it was, the moment before everything went wrong. Eleanor, full of hope and love and courage. Jonas, presumably ready to protect her and their child, no matter the cost. But then Samuel had intervened, tried to kill his own brother, and stolen everything. Had Eleanor even had the chance to tell Jonas about the baby in person? The timeline in the other letters suggested she had. That Jonas knew and was trying to find a way to keep them all safe when Samuel attacked. But the question that haunted Levi was simpler, more urgent. What happened to the child? The next day, he hitched a ride to the county seat, a small town 40 miles away that housed the records office and a library. He spent the morning poring over old newspapers on microfilm, tracing the Cooper family story through public records. Jonas Cooper, born 1920, was declared missing in 1952 after what was described as a tragic accident in Canyonlands. His body was never found. 7 years later, in 1959, he was declared legally dead. Samuel Cooper, born 1923, took control of the family ranch in 1952 via previously signed documents. He significantly expanded operations, became a prominent local figure, and served on the county commission. He died in 1968, leaving the ranch to his son, Robert, who sold most of it to developers in the 1970s. But it was Eleanor's records that made Levi's hands tremble as he turned the microfilm wheel. Eleanor Miller, born 1924, died in 1991. The obituary was brief, mentioning she was the last of the Miller family, had lived quietly in the family home, and had been a generous donor to local charities. No mention of marriage, no mention of children. But it was Eleanor's death certificate, which Levi had to request from the county clerk, that told a different story. Under surviving relatives, it listed none. Under children, living or deceased, it read, Alice Eleanor Miller, deceased, 1948, infant. Levi stared at the certificate. Eleanor had given birth in 1948, which matched the timeline of the pregnancy in her letter. But the baby had died in infancy, or at least, that's what the official record claimed. So why did Jonas's later letters speak of protecting our child, of keeping the baby safe? Did he not know the child had died, or was something else going on? The clerk, a bored young woman filing her nails, looked up when Levi asked if there were any other records for an Alice Eleanor Miller. Just the death certificate, she said. No birth certificate on file here, which is strange. Maybe she was born in another county. Or maybe, Levi thought, she wasn't born at all. Not officially. Not if Eleanor was trying to hide the baby from her father, from Samuel, from anyone who might use the child as a weapon in the Cooper family war. He spent another hour in the library, searching phone books and city directories from the 50s through the 70s, looking for any trace of an Alice Miller or Alice Cooper. Nothing. The trail went cold in 1948, as if the child had simply vanished from the record. Frustrated and exhausted, Levi hitched a ride back to Redemption Flats as the sun began to set. Moses was waiting at the barn, standing in the doorway like a sentinel. As Levi approached, the donkey turned and led him away from the barn, heading for the west side of the property. "Not now, buddy. I'm tired." But Moses kept walking, glancing back once to make sure Levi was following. With a sigh, Levi trudged after him. The donkey led him past the property line, into the scrubland, to a place where the ground dipped into a shallow depression. There, hidden by sagebrush and salt cedar, was an old well. Levi almost missed it. The opening was covered with decaying planks, and the stone rim was barely visible above the ground. But Moses stopped right beside it and began to paw at the earth, just as he had done to reveal the tin box. "A well," Levi said, pulling back the brush. The stone rim was solid, built to last. He cleared away more of the overgrowth and found marks carved into the stones, symbols that looked like letters, but weren't quite. The same symbols he'd seen in some of Jonas's letters, cryptic notes in the margins that Levi hadn't been able to decipher. He knelt and examined the well's opening. The planks covering it were dangerously rotten. He pulled them away carefully, expecting to find water below or at least dampness. Instead, when he dropped a small rock into the darkness, it clattered against stone almost immediately. The well had been dry for years, but wells were good hiding places, private, secure, easy to access, if you knew where to look. "Jonas," Levi whispered, "this is where you hid things, wasn't it? Where you kept things safe?" Moses made a soft sound, almost as if in agreement. The light was fading fast. Levi would need rope and a better flashlight if he was going to descend into the well, and he needed to do it safely. But he couldn't shake the feeling that this was important, that Moses had led him here for a reason. Eleanor's letter had mentioned a meeting by the old well. This had to be the place, a spot that meant something to both Jonas and Eleanor, where they had made their plans and shared their secrets. As full darkness fell, Levi walked back to the barn with Moses at his side. The donkey's presence was a steady, comforting weight. Whatever Jonas had hidden in that well, it had waited for decades. It could wait one more night. But Levi lay awake for hours, staring up at the rafters, thinking of a baby who had officially died in 1948, but might have survived. Of a woman who loved so deeply she was willing to give up everything. Of a man who hid in a barn for years, protecting his family from the shadows. And of the symbols carved into the stone rim of a well. A message left in a code only those who needed to know could understand. Tomorrow, he would go down into the well. Tomorrow, he would find what Jonas had left behind. Levi bought 50 feet of rope at the general store the next morning, along with a battery-powered lantern and a few other supplies. Martha watched him count out his carefully saved dollars and asked no questions, but her expression was knowing. She understood, somehow, that he was getting close to something important. By noon, he was back at the well, Moses standing guard. The day was hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and turned every breath into an effort. Levi tied the rope to a sturdy tree, tested his weight against it, then lowered himself into the well's opening. The descent was only about 15 feet. The well wasn't as deep as he had feared. His boots touched the bottom, and he switched on his flashlight, swinging the beam around the space. It was bone dry. It had likely been that way for decades. The walls were stone, carefully fitted, solid work, and carved into those stones, at eye level, on every side, were words. Levi held his breath. This wasn't just a well. It was a chronicle, a testament. Jonas's story, carved in stone where no one could ever erase it. He started at what looked like the beginning, marked with a date, June 1950. I write this so someone will know the truth. My brother Samuel tried to kill me today. We argued about the ranch, about father's will, about the debts he owes to the wrong kind of men. When I refused to sign over my share, he came at me from behind and pushed me into the gorge. I fell 20 feet into the river. He must have thought I drowned, but I survived. The next entry was dated a week later. I am hiding in the barn now, the old one father built before I was born. Samuel believes I am dead. The whole town believes it. I heard him tell Eleanor that I ran off, that I abandoned her. She thinks I am a coward. I cannot show myself yet. Samuel has men watching her, waiting to see if I make contact. If they know I survived, he will finish the job, and Eleanor will be in danger. More dates, more entries. Jonas had lived in this barn for months, then years, carving his story out bit by bit. He detailed how Samuel had forged documents with his signature, how he'd claimed the ranch through legal manipulation, how he'd ensured Jonas was declared dead. But other entries spoke of Eleanor. She came today, left food and water in the stall, like she always does. She knows I'm alive now. I revealed myself to her last month. I could no longer stand for her to believe I had abandoned her. She wept. She embraced me. She told me about our daughter, Alice, born 2 months ago, perfect and healthy. Eleanor told her family the baby had died. She buried an empty coffin and managed the paperwork with the help of her understanding aunt in California. Our daughter lives there now, safe with a family who will love her. Eleanor did it all to protect Alice. From her father, from Samuel, from all of this. I will never hold my own child. But she will live. And that is enough. Levi's hand trembled as he traced the carved letters. So Alice had survived. The death certificate was a fiction, a necessary lie to keep the child safe. His grandmother, for that is who she must have been, had lived, grown, had children of her own, one of whom would be Levi's mother. He had thought his family history was one of simple loss and bad luck, but it was this, a deliberate sacrifice, a love strong enough to surrender everything. More entries detailed the passing years. Jonas watched from hiding as Samuel prospered, as the ranch grew, as his brother became a pillar of the community, a man built on a foundation of lies. Eleanor visited when she could, always careful, always terrified of leading Samuel's suspicion back to Jonas. Then, an entry dated 1952. I am growing weaker. The injuries from the fall have finally caught up with me. Pains in my chest, a shortness of breath. Eleanor brings remedies, but I know my time has come. I do not fear death. I only regret that I could not give Eleanor and Alice the life they deserved. I leave this record so that one day, God willing, a Cooper will return and know the truth. The proof is buried in the foundation. The well holds the key, and the donkey will remember. Moses has been with me through it all, faithful and constant. When I am gone, he will watch over this place and his children and their children after them. Donkeys live a long time, and they remember for even longer. When the right person comes, Moses will know. The last entry was simple. To whoever reads this, do not let them be forgotten. Do not let the lie stand forever. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Not if someone is willing to fight for it. Be well, and God bless you. Jonas Cooper, 1952. Levi stood at the bottom of the well, tears streaming down his face. His great-grandfather had died alone in a barn, hidden like a fugitive, denied even the dignity of his own name on a headstone. And yet, he had possessed enough hope to leave this message, to believe that someone, someday, would care enough to find the truth. "I'm here, Jonas," Levi said aloud, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "I'm listening." He swept the flashlight beam across the bottom of the well one more time, and something glinted in the light. Wedged between two stones, almost invisible, was a piece of metal. Levi knelt and worked it free. A silver pocket watch, tarnished nearly black with time, but as he rubbed it against his shirt, the engraving on the back became visible. For Jonas, from Father, 1940. Levi's throat tightened. It had been a gift, likely for Jonas's 20th birthday. He had carried it his whole life, until the very end, and then left it here as a marker. Proof that he was real, that this wasn't just a story spun by a madman. Levi climbed out of the well, the watch clutched in his hand. Moses was waiting at the top. When the donkey saw the watch, he let out a bray, not of distress, but of recognition, as if he knew it had been there all along. "Your great-great-grandfather was there when he left this, wasn't he?" Levi asked softly. "Jonas told him to watch over it, and you have ever since." The donkey pressed its head against Levi's chest in a gesture that could only be called an embrace. Later that afternoon, a truck pulled up to the barn. Levi watched it approach, a weary sense of inevitability settling over him. The vehicle was new and expensive, an alien thing in this forgotten corner of the desert. The man who stepped out was in his 50s, well-dressed in crisp khaki pants and a polo shirt, wearing sunglasses that probably cost more than Levi earned in a month. "You must be the fellow who bought the barn," the man said, not offering a hand. "I'm Victor Brennan. I own the development company that's been buying up land in this area." "I'm Levi Cooper," Levi said, letting the name hang in the air. "Samuel Cooper's grandson." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Cooper? Interesting coincidence. Listen, I'll get straight to the point. I'd like to buy this property from you. I'm willing to offer you $50,000, cash, considerably more than the $15,000 you paid for it." $50,000 was more money than Levi had seen in years. It was tempting, dangerously so. But he thought of the watch in his pocket, of the words carved in stone, of Jonas's faith that someone would come and fight for justice. "I'm not interested in selling." Victor's expression hardened. "Mr. Cooper, you don't seem to understand the situation. This land is worthless. No water rights, no access, no utilities. That barn is about to fall over. You're squatting in a death trap. Take my offer and walk away with enough to start over somewhere else." I said no. Victor pulled out a business card and tossed it onto the dirt between them. "When you change your mind, and you will, call this number. But the offer won't be 50,000 forever. These things have a way of depreciating when people fail to act rationally." He got back in his truck and sped off, leaving a cloud of dust hanging in the air. Moses had moved to Levi's side, and together they watched the truck disappear. "He's worried," Levi said quietly. He knows I'm asking questions, and he's worried about what I might find. That's why he wants me gone." The donkey made a low sound, protective and fierce. "Don't worry, old friend. I'm not going anywhere." Levi pulled out the pocket watch and held it in the fading sunlight. The metal gleamed despite its age. "Jonas left this for me to find. He left all of this. And I'm going to make sure his story gets told, no matter what Victor Brennan threatens." But as he walked back to the barn that evening, Levi couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a powerful enemy. Victor hadn't driven all the way out here just to make a simple offer. He was sending a message: get out, or face the consequences. 3 days after Victor's visit, Marta Brennan appeared at the barn just after dawn. She glanced around nervously before approaching, and Levi knew at once that this visit was a secret. "I brought you something," she said, pulling a rolled-up document from her canvas bag. "It's old, from 1895, the original survey of this entire valley." Levi unrolled the map on the barn floor, weighing the corners with rocks. The paper was yellowed and brittle, the ink faded, but still legible. It showed the valley as it was over 80 years ago, divided into large parcels with family names marked: Cooper, Miller, Brennan. The Cooper land was enormous, nearly 3,000 acres stretching from the mountains to the valley floor. And there, marked with a careful notation, was the barn property. And something else: a year-round underground spring. "Water," Levi breathed. "Victor has been buying up land to build resorts," Marta explained. "Golf courses, luxury homes, a spa. But all of it is worthless without water. This is a desert. You can't build what he wants without a reliable source." She pointed to the spring on the map. "That spring is on your property, Levi, or rather under it. The water rights were never severed from this parcel when everything else was broken up. I found this in my husband's papers after he passed. He was Samuel Cooper's partner for years. I think he kept it as insurance." "Does Victor know?" "He knows there's water here somewhere. That's why he wants your land so badly. Without those water rights, his entire development collapses. He has investors, bank loans, contracts. If he can't deliver, he loses everything." Marta's expression was pained. "He is my son, and I love him. But I cannot stand by and watch him do to you what Samuel did to Jonas. It's happening all over again, don't you see? Another generation, another Cooper being forced from the land that is rightfully theirs." Levi felt the weight of history pressing down on him. Samuel's grandson, trying to take the little that remained of the Cooper legacy, just as Samuel had taken everything from Jonas. The pattern repeating, because the lie had never been corrected. "Why are you helping me?" Levi asked. She was silent for a long moment. "Because I spent 30 years married to a man who profited from Samuel's crimes, living in comfort bought with stolen land. I didn't know the whole truth then. But ignorance does not absolve complicity. And when I found out what really happened, what Samuel did to Jonas, to Eleanor," her voice broke, "I can't undo the past. But maybe I can help set one thing right." After Marta left, Levi spent hours studying the map, tracing the property lines with his finger, understanding for the first time the true scale of what Jonas had lost. Not just a ranch, but a legacy. Not just land, but water. The most precious resource in the desert. In the following weeks, Victor's pressure intensified. First came the official letter from a lawyer claiming the barn was structurally unsound and a public safety hazard. It would have to be inspected, and if not up to code, condemned. Then came the visits from Victor's men, guys in trucks who would drive slowly past the property, watching, taking notes. They never made a direct threat, but their presence was menace enough. Moses grew increasingly protective. Whenever strangers approached, the donkey would position himself between them and Levi, ears laid back, ready for a fight. One afternoon, two of Victor's men trespassed onto the property, and Moses charged them, braying loud enough to be heard a mile away. They scrambled back to their truck, cursing, and didn't return. "Good boy," Levi said, scratching the donkey's ears. "Your ancestors would be proud." Word of the conflict spread through Redemption Flats. The town was small enough that everyone had an opinion. Some of the older residents remembered the Coopers, remembered the whispers about Samuel's suspicious rise to power. They supported Levi quietly, bringing him food and offering words of encouragement. But others had hitched their futures to the prosperity Victor's development promised. They saw Levi as an obstacle, a drifter stirring up trouble over some old story that didn't matter anymore. One morning at the general store, Levi overheard two men talking. "That Cooper fella should just take the money and move on. What's he holding on to that ruin for?" "Pride. Heard he's claiming the whole ranch should be his, going back to some old family feud. Victor says the guy's trying to blackmail him, holding up the whole development to get a bigger payout." Levi didn't correct them. He let them talk. The truth would come out eventually. He returned to the well often, rappelling down with his lantern to read Jonas's carved words again, finding details he had missed. Jonas had documented more than just his own tragedy. He had recorded specific dates, names, events that could be verified. Forged deeds, witnesses Samuel had bribed, business deals that fell suspiciously into place. And scattered throughout the inscriptions were references to Eleanor's visits. "She brought bread today, and hope. Eleanor says our daughter is walking now. She still loves me, though I can give her nothing but danger and hiding." The devotion between them echoed across the decades. Jonas had given up everything, his name, his ranch, his life in the sun, to protect her and their child. And Eleanor had never stopped coming, never stopped believing in him, even when the world said he was dead. One entry, carved near the bottom of the well where Jonas's handwriting had grown shaky, struck Levi with particular force. "I saw Samuel ride by today, inspecting his fences, counting his cattle. He looks prosperous and satisfied. He has built an empire on my grave, but he does not sleep well. I see the lights on in his house at 3 in the morning. Guilt is a patient thing. It waits. And even if I do not live to see justice, someone will. The truth is in the foundation. I made sure of it." Jonas had written that last part several times, always coming back to that one phrase. The truth is in the foundation. At first, Levi thought he meant it metaphorically, that the barn itself, the well, and the carved messages were the foundation of the truth. But the more he considered it, the more literal it seemed. The barn's foundation. The actual base of stone and concrete upon which the structure was built. That night, with Moses watching curiously, Levi began to examine the barn's foundation more closely. The building rested on a combination of stone pillars and packed earth, typical for structures of its era. But in one corner, partially hidden by years of accumulated debris, several stones seemed looser than the rest. He worked carefully, prying them free one by one. Behind them was a cavity in the base, deliberately created, about 2 feet square, and inside that hollow, wrapped in oilcloth to protect it from the damp, was another package. Levi lifted it out with trembling hands. The oilcloth was similar to the one that had protected the tin box, and when he unwrapped it, he found a leather-bound journal, its cover worn but intact. Jonas's diary. The full story. He sat on the barn floor as the last of the light faded, Moses settling beside him, and opened the first page. My name is Jonas Cooper, and this is the true account of what happened to me, my family, and the land that was stolen from us. If you are reading this, then you are either my descendant or someone who cares for justice. Either way, you deserve to know. Levi read through the night, turning the pages with care, absorbing every word. Jonas had documented everything: the dates, the events, the people involved. He had tucked official documents into the journal, copies of his father's true will, photographs of the family, and even the original deed to the farm. He'd included his own marriage certificate to Eleanor Miller, performed by an itinerant preacher in 1947, and Alice's true birth certificate, showing his and Eleanor's names as parents. The diary was proof, real, solid, legal proof that everything Samuel had claimed was a lie. And tucked into the last page was a handwritten will dated 1952, signed by Jonas and witnessed by two names Levi didn't recognize. It left everything, the farm, the land, all Cooper holdings, to my daughter, Alice Eleanor Cooper, and her descendants, forever. Levi closed the diary and sat in the darkness. He had found what Jonas had left for his swoon. Not just a history, but evidence. Not just a family story, but a legal standing. Victor Brennan wanted this land because it had water. But Levi was beginning to understand that it represented something far more valuable: the chance to restore what had been stolen, to speak for those who had been silenced, to prove that some betrayals are too great to be forgotten. Moses rested his head on Levi's lap, as patient and faithful as his ancestors had been. Tomorrow, Levi said softly, stroking the donkey's ears. Tomorrow, we start to fight. Levi read Jonas's diary 3 times before the full impact sank in. The first read was for the basic facts, the chronology of events, the documentation of Samuel's betrayal, the proof of forgery and attempted murder. The second read was for the emotional weight, to understand the fear and love that drove Jonas and Eleanor to make impossible choices. But it was on the third reading, in the gray light of dawn with Moses dozing beside him, that Levi truly understood what he was holding. The journal entries near the middle detailed Alice's early years. Jonas had never known his daughter in person. It was too dangerous. But Eleanor had brought him photographs, stolen moments captured on film. Levi studied these pictures carefully, pulling them from where Jonas had tucked them between the pages. A baby, perhaps 6 months old, with dark hair and serious eyes. Written on the back in Eleanor's hand, Alice, October 1947. She has your chin, your stubbornness. Another photo, a toddler standing in a garden holding a flower. Alice, age 2, living with my Aunt Margaret in San Diego. She is happy and safe. More photos documented Alice's growth. At 5, at 8, at 10. The last photograph showed a young woman, about 18, standing in front of a house with a man in a military uniform. On the back it read, Alice on her wedding day 1965. She married James Whitmore, a good man. She does not know about us, and perhaps it is for the best. May she have a life free from all this pain. Levi stared at the photograph of Alice's face. There was something familiar in her features, something that stirred at his memory. He reached for his wallet, and pulled out the single photo he carried. It was of his mother, taken when she was young, before life had worn her down. He held the two pictures side by side. They were the same person. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His mother had been adopted. She'd always known that much, but she never knew by whom or why. She'd been raised by a woman she called Aunt Margaret, and later learned her birth mother's name was Eleanor Miller. But the trail had gone cold there. His mother had died 5 years ago, never knowing the full truth of her origins. But now, Levi knew. His mother was Alice, which meant Jonas Cooper was his great-grandfather, and Eleanor Miller was his great-grandmother. The barn he'd bought for $15 wasn't just connected to his family. It was his family's property, his inheritance, his birthright. His hands trembled as he turned back to the diary, reading now with a new understanding. Every entry about our daughter was about his grandmother. Every expression of love and sacrifice was for his bloodline. Jonas had died protecting Levi's family, without ever knowing Levi would exist. The diary contained more than just personal reflections. Jonas had been methodical, almost obsessive, in documenting everything. He'd noted the dates of meetings where Samuel discussed his plans with associates, the names of people who helped forge documents, the specific lies that were told. He had even managed to obtain, Levi wasn't sure how, copies of some of the forged papers, which he'd annotated with notes, showing how Samuel had manipulated his signature. But the most important document was the will. Jonas had written it himself, with two passing ranch hands as witnesses, men who had no connection to the Cooper-Miller feud and no reason to lie. The will was clear and legally binding. I, Jonas Cooper, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath all my worldly possessions and titles, including all lands deeded to me by my father, Charles Cooper, and all appurtenant water and mineral rights, to my daughter, Alice Eleanor Cooper, and to her descendants in perpetuity. This supersedes any and all documents claiming I have signed said holdings over to my brother, Samuel Cooper, as I did not sign such documents, and any bearing my name are forgeries made under duress or without my knowledge or consent. The language was formal, careful, and legally precise. Jonas may have been hiding in a barn, but he understood the importance of creating a document that would hold up in court. The witnesses had signed and dated it, May 15, 1952, just weeks before Jonas's death. And there was more. Tucked into the back cover of the diary was a marriage license, creased and faded but official. Jonas Cooper and Eleanor Miller, married by the Reverend Thomas Ashford on September 3, 1947. The wedding had been held in secret, in the barn itself, with only the Reverend and two witnesses present, neither of them family. And there was Alice's true birth certificate, not the falsified death certificate that had been publicly filed. Alice Eleanor Cooper, born April 2, 1948, to Jonas Cooper and Eleanor Miller Cooper. The parents' residence was listed as Redemption Flats. Levi sat surrounded by the evidence of lives lived in shadow and sacrifice. Jonas hadn't just hidden to save himself. He had orchestrated an elaborate deception to protect his wife and daughter from Samuel's reach. Eleanor had played her part, telling everyone her baby had died, arranging for the child to be raised elsewhere, under a different story. They had given up their own happiness, their own life together, so that Alice could grow up safe and normal. And it had worked. Alice had lived a full life, married, had children, including a daughter who would become Levi's mother. The Cooper bloodline had continued in secret, unknown to Samuel and his descendants, waiting for the moment the truth could finally be revealed. The weight of the understanding pressed down on Levi. He wasn't just a drifter who had stumbled upon a family mystery. He was the heir, the direct descendant Jonas had written about in his will. Everything Samuel had stolen, the farm, the land, the water rights, it all should have passed to Alice, and from her to Levi's mother, and from his mother to him. Victor Brennan's entire empire was built on land that legally belonged to Levi. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about a barn and half an acre anymore. If Jonas's will was valid, and Levi believed it was, then Levi had a legitimate claim to thousands of acres, including the very land Victor was trying to develop. The water rights alone would be worth a fortune. But more than that, it represented justice for Jonas and Eleanor, the acknowledgement of the truth they had died to protect. But claiming that inheritance would mean going to war with Victor, with the entire Brennan family, with everyone who had profited from Samuel's theft. It would mean lawyers and courts, and a legal battle that could take years. Levi had 73 cents in his pocket, and a barn that was barely standing. How could he possibly fight that battle? Moses stirred beside him, lifting his head to look at Levi with those knowing eyes. The donkey let out a soft sound, almost like encouragement. "Your family waited decades for this," Levi said, touching the donkey's warm neck. "Generations of Moseses watching over this place, keeping the secret safe. You knew someone would come back. You knew." He looked around the barn, at the initials carved into the support beam, at the spot where the tin box was hidden, at the loose foundation stones that concealed the diary. Kindness had left a trail of breadcrumbs, a path for someone to follow. And Moses' ancestors had kept the vigil, passing the knowledge down somehow, keeping the barn and its secrets safe. Levi thought of his mother, of how she had struggled her entire life, working multiple jobs, just barely getting by. She should have been born into wealth. The Cooper farm had been one of the most prosperous in the region, but Samuel's theft had stripped that away before she was old enough to know what she'd lost. She died believing she'd come from nothing, that her birth parents were too poor or too troubled to keep her. But the truth was the opposite. Her parents had loved her so much they gave her away to save her life. Jonas and Eleanor had sacrificed everything so that Alice could be safe and free. And now, 5 years after his mother's death, Levi had found the proof. He held in his hands the evidence that would restore her name, acknowledge her true parentage, and reclaim the legacy that should have been hers. The sun was high now, streaming through the broken slats of the barn and painting everything in gold. Levi stood, holding the diary carefully, and walked to where Moses stood near the door. "I'm going to fight for it," he said, as much to himself as to the donkey. "I'll take on Victor and his lawyers and anyone else who stands in the way. Because this isn't just about me. It's about Jonas. It's about Eleanor. It's about Alice, my grandmother. It's about making sure their sacrifice meant something." Moses nudged his nose against Levi's chest, a now familiar gesture of solidarity. Levi looked out across the desert toward the town, toward the land that had once been Cooper land. Samuel had thought he could erase Jonas, could rewrite history to suit his own greed. Victor thought he could continue that erasure, pressure Levi to sell and disappear. But they had both made the same mistake. They had underestimated the power of the truth and the resolve of people with nothing left to lose but their dignity. Jonas had written in his final diary entry, "I leave this for whoever comes after." I leave this as proof that some things cannot be stolen, no matter how much power the thief holds. Land can be taken, money can be robbed, documents can be forged, but the truth remains, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to speak it. Levi would be that person. He would speak the truth that Jonas had preserved in stone and ink and leather. He would fight for Alice's name, for his mother's memory, for the legacy 3 generations of Coopers had been denied. The barn that cost him his last $15 had given him something priceless, a purpose, an identity, and the chance to right a decades-old wrong. He was no longer just Levi Cooper, drifter and failure. He was the great-grandson of Jonas, the grandson of Alice, the heir to the Cooper farm, and he wasn't running anymore. The lawyer's office in the county seat smelled of old paper and stale coffee. Ronald Pearson was in his 60s, with graying hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He'd been practicing law in the region for 40 years, which meant he remembered the Cooper family. He remembered when the farm was still whole. Levi sat across from him, the diary and all its accompanying documents spread across the polished desk. Pearson had been examining them for nearly an hour, occasionally making a note, his expression growing more serious with every page. "This is extraordinary," Pearson said at last, setting down Jonas's will with careful reverence. "I've been hearing whispers about the Cooper affair for decades. There had always been whispers that Samuel's claim wasn't legitimate, that Jonas hadn't really died in that ravine. But I never imagined there would be so much documentation. Could this actually hold up in court?" Pearson leaned back in his chair, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. "Legally, yes. This will was properly executed, witnessed, and dated. The marriage certificate is valid. The birth certificate establishes a clear lineage, and Jonas's own documentation of the forgery, combined with these copies of the fraudulent papers." He tapped the stack on his desk. "This is compelling proof of fraud. In a just world, this would be an open and shut case. But we don't live in a just world, Mr. Cooper. We live in a world where the Brennan family has held this land for 70 years. They've paid taxes on it, developed it, and sold parcels of it to third parties who bought in good faith. We would be challenging not only Victor Brennan's lawyers, but potentially dozens of other landowners who stand to lose everything if your claim succeeds." Pearson put his glasses back on, his gaze meeting Levi's. "You're not just taking on Victor. You're taking on the entire economic structure of this valley. I don't have a choice." "Actually, you do. You could take this evidence to Victor privately, negotiate a settlement. He'd likely pay a handsome sum to make this go away quietly. You could walk away with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life." "That's not justice." "No," Pearson agreed softly. "It isn't. But it's practical, and practicality keeps the lights on." He paused. "I'll be honest with you. A case like this could take years. 3, 5, maybe longer. The legal fees would be substantial, easily reaching 6 figures. There would be discoveries, depositions, expert witnesses, title searches going back a century. And Victor will fight you every step of the way. He has the resources. He has the political connections. He will make this as expensive and difficult as possible, hoping you run out of money or will before he does." "And if I can't pay?" Pearson offered a faint smile. "I'm old enough now that I don't have to worry about money anymore. And I've seen enough injustice in this valley to recognize when something needs to be challenged, whether it's profitable or not." He tapped the journal again. "Jonas Cooper left this proof behind because he believed in justice delayed, but not denied. It would be an honor to help prove him right. We'll settle up my fee when we win." When? When we win, Levi said, his voice firm. That afternoon, Victor showed up at the barn again, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought two lawyers in expensive suits and a man Levi recognized from town as a county commissioner. Mr. Cooper, Victor said, his tone carefully controlled. I believe we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to make you a new offer. $50,000 for this property, and you sign a document confirming you have no further claim to any land in this valley. That's 10 times my previous offer. It's more money than you've likely ever seen in your life. Moses, standing beside Levi, let out a low, warning rumble. I'm not selling, Levi said. Not for 50,000, not for any amount. One of the lawyers stepped forward. Mr. Cooper, my client is being extraordinarily generous. You should be aware that we have already filed paperwork with the county claiming adverse possession of this property. The Brennan family has maintained the surrounding land for decades, and this parcel has no clear chain of title. If you refuse to negotiate, we will take legal action to have you removed. Then you'd better bring good lawyers, Levi said calmly, because I have documents proving Jonas Cooper never signed his property over to Samuel. I have a valid will leaving everything to his daughter, Alice, my grandmother. And I have proof that every claim your client's family has made for 70 years is based on forgery and attempted murder. Victor's face went pale. The lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. The commissioner cleared his throat. You're bluffing, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Come to the town hall meeting Saturday at noon, Levi challenged. I'll show everyone exactly what I have. Let the community decide who's telling the truth. After they left, the weight of what he had just done settled on Levi. He had declared war. Victor would come at him with everything now. Legal pressure, social pressure, every weapon available to a man of wealth and influence. The news spread through Redemption Flats faster than a wildfire. By evening, Martha had heard of the confrontation and came to the barn. People are talking, she said. Some are excited. They want to hear what proof you have. Others are scared, worried about their own property values if old land claims are reopened. And Victor, she paused. He's telling everyone you're a con man, trying to extort him with forged documents. The documents are real. I know. Martha's chin was set with determination. And I will testify to it. I will tell everyone what I found in my husband's papers, what I know about Samuel's dealings. And I'm not the only one. Some of the other old-timers, they remember things. They've kept quiet for years, because who wants to cross the richest family in the valley? But now that someone is finally standing up, they're ready to talk. Over the next few days, 3 elderly residents of Redemption Flats made their way to the barn to share their stories. Tom Richter, the town auctioneer, had been a young ranch hand on the Cooper property in the 1950s. He'd seen Samuel's men destroying evidence after Jonas's supposed death and had overheard conversations he was never meant to hear. Mary Chan, who ran a small diner on the edge of town, remembered Ellie and Anna Miller coming in for coffee in the years after Jonas disappeared. She always looked so sad, Mary recalled, like someone carrying a grief too heavy to bear. But every few months, she'd come in looking lighter, almost peaceful for a day or two. I always wondered what gave her those moments of peace. She was visiting Jonas, Levi explained. She'd bring him supplies at the barn. Those were the good days. Mary's eyes filled with tears. All those years, and she never stopped loving him, never stopped being true. The third visitor was 87-year-old Ben Morrison, who had worked in the county assessor's office in the 1950s. I processed the paperwork when Samuel claimed the property. There were irregularities, dates that didn't line up, signatures that looked off. I mentioned it to my supervisor, but he told me to let it go, that the Brennan family business was too complicated for me to understand. Ben's calloused hands trembled slightly. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions. Maybe if I had, this could have been set right 70 years ago. You can help set it right now, Levi told him. As Saturday approached, Levi prepared his presentation. He organized the documents chronologically, created a timeline of events, and practiced explaining the story in a way that was clear and simple. Ronald Pearson helped him understand the legal implications, coaching him on how to present the evidence without making claims he couldn't support. But there was something else he needed to do first. On Friday afternoon, he asked Martha to show him where Elianana was buried. The Redemption Flats Cemetery sat on a hillside overlooking the valley, a sparse collection of weathered headstones and struggling desert plants. Elianana's grave was in the Miller family plot, marked by a simple stone, Elianana Miller. She waited. She chose those words herself, Martha said softly. Had them put on the stone before she died. Nobody knew what she meant. Now we do. Levi knelt by the grave, placing his hand on the sun-warmed stone. I found him, Elianana. I found Jonas, and I found the truth. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell everyone. I'm going to make sure people know you weren't just some eccentric spinster. You were Jonas's wife. You were Alice's mother. You were faithful to the end. Moses had followed them to the cemetery, and now stood silently beside the grave, as if paying his own respects. From Elianana's grave, Levi had Martha show him where Jonas lay. She led him to the far eastern edge of the property, to a spot where a single, proud cottonwood tree grew. This isn't in the official cemetery, Martha explained. Elianana must have buried him here in secret, on his own land. There's no marker, but the old-timers say this is where he rests. Levi spent an hour that evening gathering stones to mark the grave properly, creating a cairn that would endure. He etched Jonas's name and dates onto a flat rock and placed it at the head of the mound. It wasn't an official headstone, but it was an acknowledgement, the beginning of bringing Jonas out of the shadows. You did everything right, Levi said to his great-grandfather's resting place. You protected your family. You preserved the truth. You kept faith when everything was taken from you. Tomorrow, I'm going to honor that. I'm going to finish what you started. The cottonwood leaves rustled in the evening breeze, and Levi chose to believe it was Jonas answering him. That night, Victor came to the barn one last time. He came alone, which somehow made him more menacing. The headlights of his expensive truck cut through the darkness, and when he stepped out, his expression was a mask of cold fury. Last chance, Cooper. Walk away now, tonight, and I'll give you $100,000 in cash. You take the money and disappear, and we forget any of this ever happened. No, then you're a fool. Victor's voice was hard as flint. You think you can win this? You think some old papers and a sob story will make people side with you over me? I own this valley. I employ half the people who live here. I have lawyers who will tie you up in court until you're old and broke. And if by some miracle you do win, if some judge actually believes your story, I'll make sure this barn is burned to the ground before you can claim it. There will be nothing left for you to inherit. Now get off my property. Victor stared at him for a long moment, then laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. Your property? You really believe that, don't you? You think a $15 bill of sale and a fantasy about your grandfather and make this yours? He turned to leave, then stopped. Tomorrow, when you stand up in that town hall and give your little performance, you remember that you chose this. Whatever happens next is on you. After Victor's truck had disappeared into the darkness, Levi sat on the barn steps with Moses beside him. His hands were trembling, not with fear, but with a surge of rage and adrenaline. Victor had threatened to burn the barn, to destroy the last physical proof of Jonas's life. "We'll be ready," Levi said to Moses. "Whatever he does, we'll be ready." But inside, a sliver of doubt gnawed at him. What if Victor was right? What if the truth wasn't enough? What if money and power won, just as they had when Samuel stole the ranch 70 years ago? Moses rested his head on Levi's shoulder, a warm, solid, and faithful presence. "Your family has waited 3 generations for this moment," Levi whispered. "I won't let you down." The stars shone with fierce intensity in the desert dark. Out there, Ellenena rested in her grave, and Jonas lay beneath his cottonwood. They had done their part, preserving the truth at a tremendous personal cost. Now it was Levi's turn to carry it forward. Tomorrow, before the community, he would tell their story. He would show the proof. He would fight for justice. And whatever came after, victory or defeat, justice or loss, at least he would have tried. At least Jonas and Elianina would know that someone had cared enough to speak for them. Sometimes, that was all you could do. Stand up and speak the truth, regardless of the consequences. Tomorrow, that was exactly what Levi Cooper intended to do. The old town hall hadn't seen a crowd like this in 20 years. Every chair was taken, with more people standing along the walls and spilling out the doorway. Levi recognized some faces from town, but many were strangers, people who had driven in from surrounding areas, drawn by the rumor of scandal. The air was thick with anticipation and summer heat, the ceiling fans doing little to stir the stagnant air. Victor sat in the front row, flanked by his lawyers, his face a carefully neutral mask, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. Martha sat on the opposite side of the aisle, her presence a silent rebellion against her own son. Tom Richter, Mary Chan, and Ben Morrison sat together near the middle, their faces set with resolve. Levi stood at the front of the room behind a small table where he had laid out his evidence. His hands wanted to tremble, but he willed them to be still. Ronald Pearson sat nearby, ready to handle any legal challenges, but they had agreed that Levi should be the one to tell the story. It was his family, his history, his fight. "Thank you all for coming," Levi began, his voice carrying through the hushed room. "My name is Levi Cooper, and I'm here today to tell you about a crime that happened 70 years ago. A crime that was never solved, and a theft that was never made right." He started with the photographs, holding them up for the crowd to see. Levi's voice grew stronger as he painted a picture for them. A young, strong Jonas Cooper with an honest face. The beautiful, sad Ella Lanena Miller. Their daughter, Alice. As a baby, a child, a young woman. "This is Jonas Cooper," Levi began. "He owned the farm that once covered most of this valley. This is Ella Lanena Miller, the woman he loved. They were secretly married in 1947 and had a daughter, Alice, in 1948. His voice filled the room. Jonas was the rightful heir to the Cooper farm, but his brother, Samuel, wanted it all for himself. In 1950, Samuel tried to murder Jonas, pushing him into the gorge. Jonas survived, but he was forced into hiding. Samuel had the law on his side and the will to finish what he'd started. He held up the letters then, reading excerpts aloud. Elena's words about her pregnancy. Jonas's anguished writing about watching his brother steal everything from him. Their desperate plans to keep their daughter safe. Samuel forged Jonas's signature on the farm's transfer documents, Levi continued. He told everyone Jonas had either run off or died. He built an empire on stolen land. Levi presented the forged documents, then the copies Jonas had meticulously annotated, revealing the fraud. Jonas documented everything. He lived in hiding for 2 years, watching Samuel thrive on lies, until he died in 1952. Victor's lead lawyer stood. Your Honor, Mr. Chairman. The town meeting had no formal structure, but someone had been appointed to moderate. This is all very moving, but it's ancient history. The statute of limitations on any potential fraud claim expired decades ago. Even if Mr. Cooper's story is true, it has no bearing on the current property rights. Samuel Cooper held that land for 17 years, sold it legally to various parties, and all those transactions were done above board. Jonas never abandoned his claim, Levi said, his voice unwavering. He was forced into hiding by an attempted murder, and he left a will. He produced the document. Duly witnessed and executed, leaving everything to his daughter, Alice, and her descendants. That's me. I am Alice's grandson. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Victor's face went pale. This is absurd! Victor shot to his feet. You can't prove any of this. These could be forgeries, fabricated to support a shakedown. You're a drifter with nothing to your name, suddenly claiming to be the heir to a fortune. It's an obvious fraud. I have witnesses, Levi said, and pointed to Tom Richter. Tom had worked on the Cooper ranch. He saw Samuel's men destroying evidence after Jonas disappeared. Tom stood, his old voice still strong. I was 20, working as a ranch hand. I saw them burning papers in barrels, sacks and sacks of documents. When I asked what they were doing, they told me to mind my own business or find another job. I kept quiet because I needed the work, but I knew something was wrong. Mary Chan rose next. I knew Elena Miller. She was a regular at my diner for 40 years. She lived alone, never married. But every few months, she'd come in with this quiet, happy look about her for a day or two, like she'd just seen someone she loved. Now I understand. She was visiting Jonas in secret. Ben Morrison stood slowly, using his cane for support. I processed the property transfer documents at the county assessor's office. The signatures looked wrong. The dates didn't line up. I reported the irregularities to my supervisor, but he told me to push them through anyway. The Cooper family had influence, and I was just a clerk, but I've carried that guilt for 70 years. Victor's lawyer tried to interject, but the moderator held up a hand. Let the man finish presenting his evidence. Levi took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would either convince them or condemn him as a fraud. He reached under the table and pulled out something he'd found in Jonas's journal that morning, tucked into a pocket in the back cover. A small reel-to-reel tape, the kind used in the early 50s. Jonas made a recording, Levi said. He found an old recorder, probably borrowed it, and recorded his testimony, his voice, his story. As he spoke, the room fell completely silent. Levi had borrowed a tape player from Ronald Pearson, one of those old machines that could still play the ancient reels. He threaded the tape carefully, his hands steady now, and pressed play. At first there was only static, a hiss and crackle of age. Then, faint but unmistakable, a man's voice emerged from the speaker. My name is Jonas Cooper. If you are hearing this, then I am dead. I am making this recording on May 20th, 1952, in the barn where I have been hiding for 2 years. The voice was hoarse with age and illness, but clear and resolute. Around the town hall, people leaned forward, straining to catch every word. My brother, Samuel, tried to kill me in 1950. He pushed me into the gorge because I wouldn't sign over my inheritance. I barely survived, but I couldn't go to the law. Samuel had them in his pocket, so I hid. I watched him steal everything my father built, everything that should have gone to my daughter. A woman in the back row covered her mouth with her hand. Others sat frozen, listening to a dead man speak. I'm dying now. I can feel it. But I've made sure the truth will outlive me. I've documented it all. The forgery, the attempted murder, the theft. I've left proof that Alice Elalanina Cooper is my daughter, and the daughter of Elalanina Miller. That we were legally married. That she is the rightful heir to everything Samuel stole. Jonas's voice grew stronger, fueled by a righteous anger. If you're hearing this, you are either my descendant or someone who cares about justice. Either way, you deserve to know. Don't let them tell you that time erases injustice. Don't let them say that because Samuel held the land for years, it became rightfully his. Theft is theft. It doesn't matter how long the thief prospers. The tape hissed, and Jonas's voice softened. Tell Elalanana I loved her to my last breath. Tell Alice, my daughter, I never got to hold. That everything I did was to keep her safe. And to whoever fights this battle in my name, thank you. Stand for what's right, even if it costs you everything. That's what it means to be a Cooper. The tape ran out. In the silence that followed, Levi looked at the crowd. Some people were weeping. Others were stunned. Victor had his head in his hands. That's my great-grandfather, Levi said softly. I'm here to finish what he started. The silence after Jonas's voice faded was profound. People sat stunned, processing what they had heard. A ghost speaking the truth across 7 decades. Levi saw tears on weathered faces, saw understanding dawn in eyes that had believed Samuel Cooper's lie their entire lives. Victor shot up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is manipulation, he blustered, but his voice lacked conviction. That recording could be fake, doctored. The technology exists to fake a 1952 recording, with period-appropriate equipment. Ronald Pearson stood, his tone sharp. I'll have that tape examined by experts if need be. But we all know what we just heard. That was Jonas Cooper's voice, recorded before your grandfather was even done spending his stolen fortune. Victor's lawyer tried a new tack. Even if the recording is genuine, it doesn't change the legal reality. Adverse possession laws exist for a reason. The Brennan family has held and improved this land for 70 years. We've paid taxes, maintained properties, created jobs and economic value. You can't just undo generations of legitimate business because of one man's grievance. One man's attempted murder, Tom Richter boomed from his seat. Let's call it what it was. The moderator stood. People, I think we need to hold on. But Marta Brennan rose slowly, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Everyone turned to look at her, including Victor, whose expression turned wary. I have something to add to Levi's evidence, she said. Something I've held on to for a very long time, waiting for the right moment. She walked to the front of the room, pulling an envelope from her purse. 5 years before she died, Elalanina Miller came to see me. She knew I had married into the Brennan family. She knew my husband had been a partner of Samuel Cooper's. She was old by then, and sick, and she wanted to make sure the truth didn't die with her. Marta opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Elena gave me this, and made me promise I wouldn't open it unless a Cooper came back to claim the land. She said I would know when the time was right. She looked at Levi. That time is now. The document she removed was formal, typed on letterhead with official seals and signatures. Marta handed it to Levi, but read aloud so all could hear. Last will and testament of Elena Miller, witnessed and notarized, filed with the county clerk on April 3, 1985. I, Elena Miller, being of sound mind and body, do make this sworn statement regarding the Cooper family property and the events of 1950 through 1952. Jonas Cooper was my husband, legally married before God, and witnesses in 1947. He was the father of my daughter, Alice Elena Cooper, born April 2, 1948. Alice was not stillborn, as public records indicate. This was a protective fiction to keep her safe from those who would have used her for leverage. Jonas did not die in 1950. He survived an attempted murder by his brother Samuel and lived in hiding until his death from natural causes in 1952. I visited him regularly, bringing him supplies and news of our daughter, whom I had placed with my aunt in California for her protection. Samuel Cooper forged his brother's signature on transfer documents for the Cooper farm. I have personal knowledge of this fraud, as Jonas showed me the genuine and the forged documents side by side. Samuel's entire claim to the property was built on lies and attempted murder. I file this testament to be opened when the descendants of Alice present themselves to claim their inheritance. Everything the Brennan family has built was founded on stolen land. Let history record the truth, even if the law cannot correct it. Marta's voice broke as she finished. Elena named me as her executor for this document. She trusted me to keep it safe until it was needed, and she filed it officially with the county. So there is no question of its authenticity. Ronald Pearson was on his feet instantly. I need to verify that record. The county clerk, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stood up. I can confirm. The document is in our records, filed and sealed by Elena Miller in 1985, with instructions that it only be opened by a direct descendant of Alice Elena Cooper or their legal representative. She walked to the front. I can provide certified copies right now if needed. Victor's face cycled from white to red. This is a conspiracy. You're all in on this, trying to steal from my family, what we've built, what we've earned. What you stole, Marta said quietly, but her words echoed through the room. Victor, I loved your father. He was a good man in many ways, but he knew. And your grandfather Samuel knew that everything you have came from theft and murder. I can't be part of that lie anymore. I won't be. Marta's eyes were wet, but her voice was firm. Elena waited her whole life for justice. Jonas died waiting for it. I will not go to my grave helping to perpetuate what Samuel did. Victor's lawyers were in urgent, whispered conversation. One of them approached the moderator. We need time to review this new evidence, to verify its authenticity and legal standing. We request a recess. The evidence is authentic, the county clerk repeated firmly. I'll swear to that in any court. Victor looked around at the faces staring at him. Some sympathetic, some angry, all of them waiting to see what he would do. His empire was crumbling. The development deals, the bank loans, the investors, all of it built on land he could no longer prove he owned. This meeting is adjourned, Victor said suddenly. He pushed past his lawyers and stormed toward the door. Victor! Marta called after him, but he didn't stop. A spike of alarm shot through Levi. Victor was desperate now, cornered. Men do dangerous things when they feel they have nothing left to lose. He thought of Victor's threat from the night before. I'll make sure that barn is reduced to cinders. I need to get back to the barn, Levi said to Ronald Pearson. He was running now, bursting out of the town hall, with several people calling after him. He heard vehicles starting behind him, people following, sensing this wasn't over. But Levi's focus was on one thing, getting to the barn before Victor did something irreversible. The 3-mile run was agonizing. Levi's lungs burned, his legs ached, but he pushed himself harder. As he crested the final rise before the barn came into view, he saw Victor's van parked beside it, and Victor himself, striding toward the structure with a red gas can in each hand. No! Levi screamed, racing down the slope. Moses was already there, standing guard between Victor and the barn door. The donkey's ears were pinned flat against his head, his entire body tense with aggression. As Victor drew closer, Moses let out a loud, piercing, furious bray and charged. Victor stumbled back, dropping one of the gasoline cans. Get away from me! He swung the other can toward Moses, but the donkey was too quick, dodging the blow and lunging again. Levi finally reached them, planting himself between Victor and the barn. Behind him, he heard the rumble of approaching vehicles and the sound of shouting. The community had followed. It's over, Victor, Levi panted. Burning down this barn won't change anything. Victor has been buying up land to build resorts, Marta explained.